So we've had 4 children and 4 words for deliverance. And now, of course, we come to the very heart of the Passover ritual, which is 4 questions. The Talmud is adamant about this point. Talmud makes it very clear, you must not tell the Passover story without asking 4 questions. And specifically, the questions are intended to engage the children. However, the Talmud asks, what do you do if there are no children at your Pesach Seder? Do you just tell the story? The Talmud says no. Even if everyone around your table is a grown-up, you ask the questions. But then it doubles down and it says, well, what if every single person around your table is a Torah scholar and already knows the answers to all the questions? And the Talmud says, even then, perhaps, especially then, you must ask the questions. There's something deeply Jewish and I think incredibly wise about centering questions in the master story of the Jewish people. In my view, it's both brilliant pedagogy, it's a brilliant educational tool to begin with questions and to continue and make sure that questions are really at the heart of what you're doing at a Pesach Seder, that the point is not to read a scripted Haggadah, but rather to ask questions and to engage in dialogue that may not actually answer the questions, but rather will force every person around the table to engage with the questions. Questions make us think. Questions open our capacity for expansive engagement. Answers are closed. Answers can shut down that critical creative part of what it means to be a human being with a human mind. These days, I think we're living through a kind of period of poverty of questions and an abundance of people telling you they have the answers. Any podcaster is not particularly interested in the questions, is only interested in telling you what he or she thinks is the right answer. That's not so Jewish. I received this beautiful gift from the PJ Library Foundation this week. It's a little Pesach edition that you can bring to your Seder. It's called Frames of Reference, Voices and Visions. And it has 6 different posters, each one with a different Jewish artist's rendering. And each one comments in a meaningful way on the Pesach. And in this one, you have this beautiful illustration by the artist James Steinberg of a quote by the wonderful Rabbi Sandy Eisenberg Sasso, who was the first woman ordained in the Reconstructionist movement as a rabbi in 1974. 2 years after the Reform movement ordained Rabbi Sally Priesand as our first female ordinee in our movement. There were other women, actually, who broke that ceiling 50 years earlier. Rabbi Regina Jonas was the first female rabbi, and until her death in the camps, led a community of Jews who had been targeted for death by the Nazis. Sasso writes, at the heart of what it means to be a Jew is to ask questions. So it's not just at the heart of the project of the Pesach, it's actually at the heart of the project of being Jewish. This was a lesson reinforced for me twofold this week. First, Rabbi Plakow and I had the delicious opportunity to nourish ourselves with questions for 3 intensive days of Talmud study at Yeshivat Hadar, which is a trans-denominational or post-denominational, that is to say, welcoming of Reform, Conservative, Orthodox, Reconstructionist, Renewal, rabbis without a brand name in front of them, for a 3-day seminar just for rabbis all across the country, men, women, different ages and stages of life, different ways of working in the world, whether congregational, organizational, retired, just starting out, full-time students, chaplains, all studying together, about 60 of us on the Upper West Side, intensely demanding questions. Not the kind of questions that we're going to be using in a sermon anytime soon. The seminar I took was mostly about how do you deal with malicious witnesses in court cases under halakha? It was great. I have no idea what I'm going to do with it, but it nourished my brain and it nourished my Jewish soul, my neshama. And then, actually, the week began with the best questions ever. I'm going to get this framed. This is a takeout bag from the Metro Deli across from Balducci's, just down the street on Palmer. I was approached a few weeks ago by Mitch and Rebecca Rose. Mitchell grew up in this congregation. His parents, Susan and Elliot Rose, are former congregants. They've since moved out of the area. Mitch was in my first confirmation class of '04, Scarsdale High School graduate of class of 2006. I then married him and Rebecca, and now they have two incredible daughters, Emma, age 7, and Haley, age 4.5, she told me. She said, we'd really love to see you. We're going to be passing through. We live in Great Neck, but we're going to go see our old stomping ground. I want to take my wife to a classic Scarsdale restaurant. We're going to meet at the Metro for brunch. And my daughter, by the way, has a lot of questions for the rabbi. I said, bring it on. And so I'm holding Emma's questions written in her own hand. Anyone who wants to see this visual aid, I'll pass it around the sanctuary, but I want it back because I'm framing this and putting it in my office. It says, question for Rabbi. Number 1, life. Number 2, death. Question number 3, why do people get sick? Question number 4, is Donald Duck real? 5, why is hate a word? And 6, who is your best friend? As rabbis are trained to do, because we are first and foremost Jewish before we are rabbis, we answered her questions with a question. So when she said life, I said, Emma, what's your question? What do you want to know about life? She said, why is life sometimes unfair, and why does it hurt so much? And then I said, so I guess that's what question number 2 about death means. She said, uh-huh. And also question number 3, why do people get sick? And maybe even question number 5, why is hate a word? So that was just one conversation around 4 questions. Then I said, can we talk about Donald Duck? Is Donald Duck real? And I said, Emma, what do you think? And she said, yes. They just got back from Disney World. I said, well, how do you know? She said, I can see him, I can hear him, and I can smell him. I said, sounds like a way you would know that someone is real. And then I said, Emma, can something be real that you can't see, that you can't hear, that you can't smell? She thought about it, and I said, let me give you an example. Do you know your mommy and daddy love you? She said, absolutely. I said, can you see love? No. Can you hear love? Not really. Can you smell love? I don't think so. You can feel it, though. You can know something's real. I don't know if we answered her questions that day, but boy, did we sure have a great conversation. And as I was getting ready, my best friend, by the way, I said, Kelly, she said, your wife doesn't count. As I was getting ready to leave, she said, Rabbi, I have one more question. I said, go for it, Emma. You're gonna be a rabbi someday, so let's start you young. She said, if Jesus was a Jew, how come he became a Christian, and why are there so many more Christian people than Jewish people? I said, I have to go to a baby naming now. So this, my friends, is what I'd like to tell you about this special 4 in the Pesach story. 4 questions, right? Your homework is actually to make sure that there are more than 4 questions that are raised at your Passover Seder. So if you have a young person in your life, maybe your child or grandchild or somebody's guest who's going to be at the Seder with you, do me a favor and ask that young person or those young people to prepare more than just the chanting from the Haggadah of the 4 questions. Ask them to come with their biggest, most burning questions. And I promise you, you will have an absolutely amazing Seder that fulfills the vision of the rabbis of the Talmud.